Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Denise Vance Rodriguez, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for Mobi and our employer segmentation. With me today is Jason Doescher. He's our Chief Medical Officer, and Leslie Helou, who is our Vice President of Medication Services. Welcome, Jason and Leslie.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Thanks, happy to be here.
I want to just do a couple of opening remarks and some housekeeping, and then introduce our guest speakers today. They've got just a wealth of knowledge in this space, and so we're very excited to have them with us. We will be doing questions and answer at the end of the session, so please make sure that you put your Q&A and your questions in the Q&A. There's also a chat feature here, so if you would like to put something in chat for the facilitators, we're happy to take a look at that and answer your questions there as well. You can also contact us through the chat so that at the end of the session, there will be a link where you can reach out and connect with us. With me today is Jason Doescher. He's our Chief Medical Officer. Dr. Doescher is certified by the American Board of Psychiatry, Neurology, with special qualifications in child neurology as well as epilepsy as a subspecialty. He brings significant experience to Mobi and a focus on comprehensive care. For years, he integrated his neurological practice with experts in neuropsychology, clinical psychology, social support, nutrition, pharmacy, community outreach, education, and research. Dr. Doescher is driving Mobi's discovery of critical elements that move people on individual paths towards better health. His approach applies energy, empathy, and expertise. He matches state-of-the-art medical science with thoughtful humanitarian spirit. So glad to have you here today, Jason. Yes. Additionally, we have Leslie Helou, our Vice President of Medication Strategy. Leslie is the Vice President who designs medication initiatives for Mobi's participants that are hyper-personalized. These action plans address the complexity of each medication while highlighting the important role they can play when achieving health goals. Prior to joining Mobi, Leslie built a career at Upshire Smith Laboratories, leading efforts to incorporate patient, provider, researcher, and advocacy groups' insights early in the pharmaceutical research and development process. Really excited to have you today and to begin this conversation. We are going to be talking about this whole idea of employee mental health today. And with that, we really have 5 strategies that we're going to be addressing with this issue. Let's begin the conversation and frame it with just a little bit of market context. So, I've been in this business for a long time, and it feels like employers have been talking about mental health for decades. Now you add, labor shortages with the Great Resignation, the impact of isolation from COVID, and ongoing issues around shortages of mental health workers. And it just really exasperates that whole idea of how do we help our people get, healthy and sustainable. Really, the numbers tell the story, though. In a recent Harvard Business Review study, 85% of employees surveyed said their workplace well-being declined since the start of COVID-19. In that same study, 62% of employees say mental health was a topic of concern during the pandemic. It still is. 80% of Americans are experiencing mental stress. And the CDC shows 67% of employees whose self-reported mental health condition indicate it's challenging to access care. These are all just kind of the beginning of the framework for our conversation today. And I want to invite Jason to kind of share a little bit, Jason, around what you believe is getting in the way of addressing these issues.
Well, Denise, there has been sort of a recognized, persistent, and hopefully resolving a stigma around mental health. We're all more comfortable talking about our physical health, modeling physical health, but we're often resistant to talk about mental health and feelings, and emotions are sensitive areas. Individuals prefer to avoid the hard stuff. And so setting a framework of comfort and breaking down the stigma and just having respect is one of the biggest barriers. Difficulty accessing the right resources. There's a shortage of good counselors and restriction to access often. mental health, there's no quick fix. It takes time, energy, attention, and there's often a long-lasting process for folks, and really requires getting to the root cause. You can't just fix the symptom. We've got to get to the bottom of what's affecting how somebody feels, and that's often complicated and often more than one thing.
Jason, thanks for framing the issue. Now that we have kind of some context around mental health issues, let's start to talk about solutions, right? So the next phase is to kind of really working with you. I know you have a very strong belief in a whole person approach. And so can you share more around your thoughts and how that works?
Well, approaching mental health in isolation really just has its limitations, and we care about results. We're talking about undoing unhappiness today. And our founder pinched me yesterday and he said, what about more happiness, more awesome, which is a charge he has started since the beginning of Moby. And that's possible. And we do it every day. We're excited about it. It's not automatic though. It takes action. And there's sort of two sides to it. There's the healing and restoring aspect, and then there's the growing and finding more joy. And so what is unhappiness? It's a normal, natural signal. Our bodies are really telling us when things aren't right, when we feel out of tune. And while that's great and easy, and we all recognize it, it's like, okay, well, where do you even start? And this whole person approach is really important. We often use the model of back in the 1970s, Dr. George Engel came up with the biopsychosocial model. We've got nearly 100 years of tremendous medical science and treating symptoms with pills and state-of-the-art technology. And he pushed back on that and said, whoa, nature is really broad. And there's tremendous things in biomedical science, absolutely, and of course, but don't discount sort of nutrition. Don't discount 30% of diets in America today are calorie dense and nutrient poor. And studies have shown that nutrition and a healthy diet can resolve and reduce the incidence of mood disorders. Exercise is one of the most effective mood therapies across a number of studies. And we all know the impact on quality sleep. I'm a pediatrician at heart, and we all know these elements, and we see them in our kids. Diet, exercise, get some fresh air, not getting enough sleep, and how they manifest as mood. They're obvious in kids. They're also elements for all of us adults as well, and have a significant impact on mood. And those are elements in a whole person approach that have a big impact. In the biopsychosocial model, there's the psychological elements, self-efficacy, your belief in being successful in managing your health, motivation, your mindset, self-determination, and kind of a self-responsibility for investing in your mental health and your happiness, sort of owning it. It's not automatic. It doesn't just come to you. We can't wait for the moment when we're more happy. And emotional health is specific. It's how you feel. It's a sense of meaning. It's your purpose in life. Time for self-care. It competes with other, crunches for time, and meditation and mindfulness. And I think over the last number of years, a real proven and effective therapy for many people is getting a better and center stage. The last element of that whole person approach and that model really identifies sort of the social elements, our relationships, and how important those are. And that's an active process, building, maintaining, utilizing your network of support, and also recognizing stressors and how you manage those stressors. It's important to have a plan. It's easy to be passive and it's easy to be overwhelmed. One of the best ways of feeling better is actually having a plan and feeling empowered. And I think lastly, about that social element is understanding how one stress might create problems in another area, and raising your hand and seeking help, accepting help. It's also important for all of us to help each other and look out for your neighbor, look out for your office mate, and ask. And so I think with that whole person approach, the way we approach it, that delivers results, we think about the things we can do, make us feel better: nutrition, diet, exercise, quality sleep. We think about investing in self-care, our motivation, our mindsets, and being willing to be direct and talk about our emotional states and what are the things that feel good and equally some of the things that don't. And then really with intention, developing and investing in our relationships and kind of appreciating that mutual responsibility. So those are the things that I think are discrete elements that can help us all invest in ourselves and grow happiness.
Thanks, Jason. Wow, in COVID, we became teachers, right? We became all these different things, and so there's so much to unravel there. And this is really insightful and helpful in understanding how to approach a whole person approach, right? We've chatted about this topic, and in addition to applying these strategies, really understanding how medication plays a role in a person's overall emotional well-being is important as well. So let's pivot for a moment to medication and the role they play in addressing the mental health issue that employers are facing. So Leslie and Jason, you work closely together in developing programs that address not only the mental health issue, but an overall holistic solution to employee well-being. Leslie, can you break down for our listeners and your team's approach, the integration of medication services and a holistic addressing mental health and overall well-being?
Sure. And we tend to think it's either lifestyle or medicine, physical or mental health, but everything that we do to our body, put in our bodies, affects not only how it functions, but how we feel. And so to really understand and recognize how we think about medications, we need to consider that it might be part of that whole person's story for many people. And it goes beyond just the prescription medications that we tend to think about for mental health or any condition really, and also thinking about the over-the-counter meds, herbal remedies, supplements, frequently being turned to today for mental wellness considerations. And so this medication reality, first we need to acknowledge it, and then also recognize that its significance is frequently underestimated. So medications are complex and they're frequently ignored. It's estimated that around 15% or more of medical spend annually is due to non-optimized med use. And so we think about that in the approach that we take. Medications are frequently started as a quick fix, quick solution, and then kind of let go and not managed properly for everybody to make sure that people are actually getting the value that medications are designed to bring, that they can achieve those outcomes that people seek to achieve, and that the risks are minimized. And this is super important in areas of mental wellness. I mean, the medications that we tend to think of that might get easily put on, they might be meant to be temporary, not long-term. They may take a very long time to actually work and achieve that better feeling that people are looking for. They all have different profiles that are unique, need to be matched up for the unique considerations that a person might have. And then on top of that, there's all the other conditions that people have. And people aren't just one issue. They aren't just one condition. They're not just one treatment or one lifestyle approach, right, to try to deal with something. So you have to consider all of that. And so that really is the foundation, the approach that we take with medications, is that it takes time, it takes attention to really understand an individual's experience with everything that they're taking. Again, like I said, prescription, over-the-counter, herbals, they all matter. They all can affect each other. And then lifestyle, everything that Jason talked about, not just intersects with each other for the person, but it also intersects with the efficacy and the risks that we see with medications. So it's really important to spend that time with somebody to understand what is impacting them and their ability to achieve their goals and how they're working to achieve them, and then adjust with them over time. Give them the information that they need to make the right decisions at the right time, and that can change.
Wow, so you're telling me there's no quick fixes, and then it really has to be a relationship, right? So really, having the opportunity to work with you, and I appreciate the work that you and your team are doing around medication management and how it ties in to this whole approach, right? Because there are no quick fixes, right? And there's a lot around what we can do to really engage people into that kind of environment. We've talked about, the holistic approach. We've talked about integrating medication management, and we have 5 points today. So I want to kind of keep us on track so we can address them all. So let's pivot to that third strategy and putting an action plan into place. You would think it's Monday. I'm tripping over my words here. So, let's talk about that for a minute and what that looks like. So Jason, you say this all the time, a person's health is uniquely theirs and they deserve to be treated as individuals in a world where we have so much focus on how to standardize and focus on efficiency. This concept seems a bit foreign, right? Why is it important to personalize the solution? Wouldn't it just be easier to give everyone the same solution?
Right. Certainly efficient, just not as effective as getting the results. And I think it's where people need results. They deserve results, and we're really grounded in results. And that's honoring that everybody has a unique journey. They've got a reason for where they're at, and many things are in their control, but some things are not. And we've outlined many diverse factors and elements of health. And in order to sort of invest in an individual, invest in themselves and those around them, we need a plan. We get set in our habits, and if we want to grow and improve, we do need to make some changes, and change is hard. So we look at solutions and choices, and then the repetition of those choices, and that's what really evolves into healthy behavioral change. Those diverse elements are also dynamic. Life changes, life comes at us fast, and we'll need to pivot. So manuals and protocols and plans can't anticipate that. And jumping from one program or app to another is just disruptive and fragmented. Keeping the bigger picture in mind and really adjusting as you go, sort of an iterative fashion, is the best and most effective way. We'll talk about how progress is not linear. There's starts, there's stops, there's turns through all of our journeys, even towards a targeted goal. And so how do you get a personalized solution? What does that really mean? It's the details matter. You have to have a plan. You have to stop and think about what are the elements, what's my goal, what are the choices that I'm making, and then act, right? Follow through on those actions. I want to do this. It's going to help me. Follow through on that. And then importantly, reflect on it, sort of action and reflection, and then adjust. And the important thing is to just keep repeating it and keep growing and keep moving in those healthy directions. And each individual is unique, and that's one of the most wonderful things. The details really just matter.
That's great, Jason. Having raised 2 boys that were polar opposites, I agree. Everyone is very unique, and everyone's journey is different. So let's talk about how this works in our next strategy, right? And how we can focus that in on this whole idea of normalizing and prioritizing mental health, right? So we've talked about, making mental health has been talked about as a priority for employers for a long time. So why do you think, Jason and Leslie, that we still have such a stigma around this topic in the workplace? Jason, you want to start us off with your thoughts on this, and then Leslie, you want to join in?
Well, it's a great time for leadership, right? Championing mental health, being honest about the problem. I mean, it improves credibility of sort of recognizing what we all know and what we experience of tremendous stress and strain. And so demonstrating empathy, respect, really valuing how people feel and interact with each other is key. And sort of normalizing health, which includes mental health and social health. Putting it together and not sort of fragmenting it, I think, is one of the key needs and values that really organizational leadership can drive and really reinforce. And so part of that is setting a healthy culture. Again, it requires active management and attention and asking, what do you need? How can we make our office, how can we make our work community healthier. Think about, again, those whole person elements, nutrition, offer time to move through the day, setting healthy boundaries on work, valuing relationships, and just creating a real positive culture. It improves absenteeism. Yeah, it breaks down isolation, which contributes to an extra week of work lost for sort of isolated and lonely employees. I think there's a number of really great opportunities, and there's a framework that can sometimes help also. We'll think about the self-determination theory with a couple of researchers back in the 80s, DC and Ryan, and they talk about autonomy, giving individuals sort of that responsibility, but that requires some flexibility, some sense of control in their work schedule. And also it helps to recognize their contributions and an opportunity for individuals to sort of share their work, feel valued on an individual level. There's competence, right? A part of that. Resources, growing new skills. It feels good when people are investing in you, and employers and organizations can provide that, even if it's health. Whether it's work-related, it feels good. Whether it's health-related, it feels good. And that last part is that sense of belonging, kind of that work community is really important. It's absolutely meaningful for folks, sort of a culture of respect, attention, interaction, caring about your neighbor. It's that back and forth between individuals that keeps us all healthy. Leslie?
And just to add a few comments there, Jason, what you covered really nicely is, simply when we think about work-life balance or flexible work environment, what are we talking about? All the things you described up front with the in the biopsychosocial aspects, and really the social aspects, those are all to reduce stressors, right? And so everything is tied and connected. And for some people, it's really important to identify where, for our workforce, where we fit into that stressor for people, and then help to, by understanding that and how it's different for everybody, and how it might affect them, giving that time and attention to addressing it, which ultimately, indirectly but directly, helps positively impact their mental health. So I think, mental health is complex, just as I was saying, medications are, and well-being, it's very different for everybody. And so just building that whole person focus and not separating anymore the physical and the mental components, but offering something that really addresses the whole person, and having opportunities for people when they do need the extra special attention. That's important too, but not at the expense of looking at the whole person approach. That needs to come first before you, latch on. When I think about medications, don't just adopt that quick fix first. Figure out where and how it's needed, how it should appropriately be used, and then but focus on that whole person's needs and situation first.
That's really great. You guys have really framed a lot around, not only how they work together, the holistic approach of, the mind and body working together, and it's such an important element. I know it's really hard in a remote world to kind of feel connected, right? And so all those things that we used to do, like walking meetings and just maybe even getting outside to have a meeting and things like that, it's kind of changed in our world. But let's kind of move into the real, where the rubber meets the road kind of conversation, right? Because we can talk about all these concepts, but we don't put them into action and employees aren't engaged, then they're kind of pointless, right? So we can go through and say, hey, do this strategy, but if they're not cohesive and you can't engage the employees, then even offering them feels like it's kind of a moot point. So let's talk about how can we improve on getting employees engaged. And I know that's certainly one of our biggest things that we're very proud of is engagement. So let's talk about that for a minute. How do you engage employees into a solution to so that, you know, you let your people know that you value their happiness and well-being.
Yeah, I agree, Denise. It's so critical having the resource and then using the resource and sort of actively managing the results. And it starts with value. I mean, you have to model value for health, mental health, all health, and really that's just kind of showing an appreciation in people. You know, when you genuinely care, people respond. We, as you mentioned, we really do talk about working with energy, empathy, and expertise, and you know, showing up with effort and attitude. And I think some of that really sets a tone, and that getting healthier and getting happier is possible. If we want to talk about specifically engaging around mental health, and if that's really, you know, our focus today, we have to recognize that people are different, and there isn't one approach that everybody's going to respond to. Some people really value being open and direct, kind of clean and honest, and saying, you know, here's an opportunity, here's a group on grief or loss, or a group on financial stressors, and people know what they need and are absolutely comfortable. It's critically important to maintain privacy and judgment, and creating those sort of values in every culture. And that sort of opens the door, but many individuals just aren't ready for that. It's a little too direct, it's a little bit too abrupt and sharp. And so they tend to be a little bit more avoidant and a little bit more passive. Again, that's, I think, where looking at health in that broad sense can be really inviting and less intimidating. Certainly our experience. We'll start working with participants, and they'll talk about nutrition, and you develop a trusting relationship, and really understanding people then can be a little bit more vulnerable. And through that, you realize that, well, gosh, we started talking about nutrition, but the real needs are revealed. And whether that's, again, financial stress or loss, those things come to the surface pretty quick, but they would not have by being so direct. And so pivoting with people, helping people, having a broad approach, again, life changes. So you may be working on one element, and something else changes in priority. And so we find that to be very effective, getting results for folks, drives engagement, and that's just awesome. And those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Jason. I'm going to go off script. You guys know I do this, so this shouldn't surprise you. You know, and I think that, you know, engagement doesn't happen with one conversation, right? And connectedness. And I want to kind of dig into that for just a second, because I feel like the reason, you know, engagement works is because you build relationship, right? And so, Leslie, I know your team spends, you know, on average an hour with a participant going through all those. Can you kind of break that down? Because that seems like a long time to spend on the phone with somebody going through. I know what medications I take, I know what herbals I take, and so what's the big deal, right? So can you kind of break down how that relationship starts to build with even just understanding what you're putting in your body?
Yeah, and you know, time, it really is, it's necessary. And then that flexibility of time is what's important, right? Some people fit nicely into a 20 minutes. Some people need that hour. And so it really depends on the individual, and going back to, you know, weaving this all together with being personalized. And, you know, the reason that that attention is needed is, you know, you can apply this approach to the one herbal supplement or medication, or the 10 or 15, which is actually a really common reality for people these days, particularly when you need to consider, you know, you got that great supplement that's got 20 things in it. Guess what? That's 20 meds. So you need to take the time to really help people understand that cost benefit valuation of what they're using it for, and do people really know what the purpose is how to know if it's working. So are they getting a benefit? How do you measure that success from a medication? And is it meant to be achieved in the short term and then you're done? Or does it need to continue to be taken to be sustained? And then there's the safety aspect, which, each medication, supplement, herbal has its own safety profile by itself, but then mix them together, not just with the different medications, but medication food combinations, medication condition combinations. Those things are all critical. And particularly when I think about mental well-being, there's some medications that you might be taking for high blood pressure, or that could impact your ability to drive up energy, in order to feel like you can move more, or just even purely feel like you have energy. And that needs to be identified and taken into consideration. You might be taking additional meds to help with your sleep, when your sleep actually is a symptom of your mood. So going through all of that and helping people understand that so that they make good choices on whether to expose themselves to unnecessary or medication for a longer than necessary time frame. That takes time to go through all of those and connect those dots, because that generally doesn't happen in the last minute and a half of an appointment where 80% of treatment plans include a medication, and usually you walk out the door with a little bit of info, not tied together to all your other conditions or situations.
Thanks, Leslie. That's really helpful in understanding it. And Jason, there's a lot of emails that I get that are around a disease category based, right? Hey, you've got this, come join, right? Then I feel like I'm being singled out. So share a little bit around why it's so valuable to not just approach it from a disease perspective, but approach it from a person perspective and build that relationship.
Right. Well, and people don't think of themselves, and they're not, their identities aren't, well, I'm a diabetic, or I have epilepsy, I'm an epileptic. People are wonderful people, and the factors that they control really are those holistic elements, where they're spending their time and energy on their health, and trying to get tuned are really the things the control of, again, nutrition. We've sort of covered them nicely, but a healthy routine, including, being social with friends. Those are the things that really feel good and make a difference. And having programs that sort of identify those as real targets, those as actionable targets with intention, ultimately gets a better result. When I took care of folks with epilepsy, we were really attentive to their sleep and mood. Why? Because it managed their epilepsy better. It was absolute factors. And in order for me to do the best job, getting the best result for them, we included strategies for everything. And I think what Leslie so nicely said was that active management, that tuning process is really key. The other thing, I'm going to share one other thing that I think so valuable about engagement in workplace sort of cultures, and that's that sort of the spirit of self-efficacy. I'm going to believe more in my ability, and I'm going to learn so much from the people around me. And when I see my colleagues doing good things for themselves and being comfortable sharing that, it's going to motivate me and make me both more confident, and I can do it. I've seen them do it. I'll go for walks through the day. I'll make better choices in the cafeteria, and I want that too. We sort of talk about that as that sort of spirit of personal health activism, and we love to see that in the folks we work with. They sort of restore their health. They sort of rebuild their health. They're filled with happiness, feeling better, and they want to share it. And share it with others. And that sort of sense of community can be so wonderfully contagious. And, again, I think that's just talking about engagement is sharing your successes with others.
Thanks, Jason. So I'm not going to get that from a bot, is what you're basically telling me, that's going to chat with me and tell me what to do. It actually has to come with community and actually that personal touch. And I know that your team spends a lot of time with the people that they engage with. I think on the average it's 30 minutes every 7 to 10 days, and that's a lot of time to spend with someone, really understanding what they're dealing with. And so thanks for kind of bringing that onto life and sharing all these great concepts. Let's just kind of do a recap of the 5 strategies we've talked about as we roll into having some time here for our participant questions as well. We've talked about how a whole person approach really helps in addressing the mental health issues that are out there with your employees. Integrating medical management. Leslie, you did such a great job of really talking through not only understanding what medications you're taking, but then, even foods and herbal supplements and over the counter, and how that really impacts your body, and a lasting impact, and personalizing it and making people feel, facing that connectedness you keep talking about, and that, making people feel like they're important, right? Not only in the workplace, but just in general in their community and how they engage, and just normalizing and prioritizing mental health in the workplace, and simple things that you can do and that to engage, and then just engagement. I mean, it really comes down to, you can have the best strategy out there and the best ideas, but if you can't get people engaged, then the solution really isn't helpful, because employees aren't going to use it. Jason, there's some really great tools that I know your team uses on the factors and how you track emotional well-being and just overall tracking whole person health. Can you kind of walk us through the factors you're tracking and why they're important and what they look like?
Well, thanks, Denise. You know me. We care about results, and we're real honest about driving results, and that starts by getting an understanding of where somebody starts. So we love a sense of warm humanities, and we use high science as well. And we use some validated tools. We use the SF-36, which looks at broad physical function and health and emotional health. And some of the things that we track related to this topic is someone's kind of perception of health, their emotional well-being. And we see nice progress from a baseline and improvement. Not only how you feel affects how you function and the impact on the responsibilities you have, that sort of role limitations. And we see nice improvement in someone's ability to perform and feel good about that. Absolutely, we care about someone's perception of their general health. And we find that many of the folks that we work with, it's lower than norms. And we love to see that improve. And even the more sort of abstract elements of sort of energy and fatigue. Again, starting at a lower place with complex health and watching that improve just affects, not only an individual's life, but again, those around them, their family, their community, neighbors, co-workers. And so, yeah, we are sincere in a word, and we really absolutely expect results. That's what it's about. It's about meeting the promise.
Great, thank you, Jason. Let's wrap it up with just a few notes. And Jason, you talk about, people feeling like they deserve to feel well. You just, give us some final thoughts on why you think it's important for people to really feel empowered and valued. I know one of the questions that popped in the Q&A is, how do you feel connected when you don't feel part of your community at work? And so share a little bit about why you deserve to feel well and feel connected.
Well, I think we want you want to feel well for ourselves. We want those around us to feel well. It's sort of an intrinsic need and desire. It's really about health and about care and concern, and it's an active process. I think what your question sort of stimulates in me is really thinking about things as an active process and a bit of important responsibility. Doing good things for myself. I can't be passive. It's not going to just Health isn't going to come to me. I can't get it through a drive-through. I can't order it in the mail, and I can't find it just in a pill. And so it's really an active process of making choices, doing the good things, doing things that are really good for you and that feel good. So many of us are givers, and we devote our time and energy. And at the end of the day, it's like, whoa, who's gonna take care of me? So part of it is the active spirit, being really engaged and making yourself a priority. When we're healthier as individuals, we have greater capacity to help those around us, and that's just a wonderful thing, to help and to accept help. We'll often say, love and be loved, and that's it's absolutely it's a difference when we really embrace that. So I think the key is just being really active, being intentional, and not quitting.
That's great, Jason. Thanks. We do have a couple questions in the Q&A section. Leslie, this one's for you. Do you find Pharmacogenomic testing? Oh, I just destroyed that. Can help when it comes to medication and the efficacy of them with different individuals?
Yeah, great, Denise, and thanks for the question about pharmacogenomic testing. There is particular value for pharmacogenomic testing in particular areas, including mental health, but it also goes beyond. The most important thing I can say about whether there is value for different individuals is it really depends on the provider that can help the person interpret and apply the results. So again, hammering back to this personalized sort of approach and the importance of time, just providing pharmacogenomic testing in and of itself as a check the box solution can provide confusion. But with the support service that can go along with it to help interpret and apply at the individual level, then there can be great value to certain individuals.
Thanks, Leslie. One of the things we'll do is this deck will be available to share, but if we can spend a few minutes on the 5-point summary slide for a moment. Is there a mnemonic to help remember these 5 steps? Is there a good way to remember the 5 steps, right? So we can go back to that slide for just a second and just break it down to something easy to remember, right? So Jason, you want to take a stab at answering this one on how to, summarize this?
I think if sometimes it feels so overwhelming, health, right? And if we just think of the kitchen table Mother Nature basics of what you eat, how you move, getting good sleep, being kind to yourself, and working with others, I think those are just the simple things that if you have a plan and invest, they make a difference. There are 2 other important elements. It's an active process, and you don't do it alone. Have that sense and develop that sense of belonging. Find a partner, find a coach if you need it. Find a mentor, and those trusted relationships, those people in our lives. And so don't do it alone. Be active and kind of go back to those important basics. They're not as easy as we think. I guess that's the last little element. It seems easy, but it's not. And so don't quit.
Right. I think we break it down pretty simple. We call them pathways, right? Eat, move, sleep, smile. And you marry that with medication and understanding what you're putting in your body and how effective it is, right? And how we do that. We've had a really great conversation today, and we've been, really thrilled to be able to share this with so many people. around how we approach, mental health and employee well-being in the workplace. And I want to give the opportunity to just remind everyone that if you would like to get more information about Mobi and how we engage with employees, please feel free to reach out. There's a link in the chat window. Also, I want to remind everybody, Mobi has a solution for pretty much everybody. We have every solution that you could think of down to the smaller employers. So we have a solution for smaller employers, and then we also have a solution for large self-insured employers. And really the goal is to get people to a healthier and happier place in their life, to be more productive at work, to be more productive in life, and just happier. And I think that when you find that you're healthier and happier, then all the other things that the connectedness and the community and all those things tend to kind of fall into place. And when you're working on those particular pathways that pertain to your life. And so I want to thank our guests today. I want to thank Leslie and Jason for attending and joining me in the conversation. And I look forward to us having our next webinar shortly in the next quarter. But in the interim, there's the contact information for me. If you have questions or would like, again, more information on Mobi and what we do, we would be happy to share that with you. And I want to bid everyone a good day and farewell. Thanks, everyone, for attending.